Are you new to Dynasty Fantasy Football and you want to jump in your first league? Or are you a seasoned veteran and you just want to get another league going? It doesn't matter. We've got you covered here on the Fantasy Headliners because we are going to be talking about Dynasty Draft Strategy. Hey, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Boy, I'm pumped. I am excited to be back here on the YouTube channel with you, dropping some content for the first time in what seems like forever. Really, Jake has been holding it down, providing some awesome videos for all of you, though. But I'm glad to be doing a little bit myself here now. Don't worry, I've been here. I've just been working in the background. We are putting a ton of work into our draft guide for this season. So, real quick before we get going here, let me pitch that to you. $19.99, you can reserve your draft guide. It'll be available by the end of June. We're going to have tons of player There's going to be probably close to, if not over, 400 player profiles, written profiles, video profiles. We're going to be talking my dynamic running back rating. That is going to be in there. I'm going to be breaking down team by team. We've got great articles. We've got offensive line rankings. We've got strength of schedule. We're working on projections. There's going to be so much in this draft guide. It is definitely going to be one of the best values that you would get for any draft guide from any website here this season. So I highly encourage you to go out there and pre-order that. Trust me, I promise you, it's going to be well worth it. But let's start jumping into this information here, and we're going to be talking about Dynasty Draft Strategy. So this is going to be for someone that's getting ready to do a startup. If someone's getting ready to draft their first Dynasty startup, your first Dynasty startup, maybe you've been in one and you're just getting into another one now, whatever it may be, some tips, some tricks, some strategy that you'll want to use during that startup. I love Dynasty leagues. I play in a lot of Dynasty leagues. That's really what kind of got me into writing and all of this was specializing in Dynasty. And that's kind of where I did a lot of my work to begin with. So I love Dynasty. We've had a lot of questions about Dynasty, so we wanted to make sure that we covered that type of strategy for you as well. And first and foremost, and this is going to be with any league, it doesn't matter if it's redraft or dynasty, it just doesn't matter. You plan before you draft, but there's a little bit of a different element that you're going to be planning for prior to your draft. You're going to want to make sure that you come in with a strategy in terms of, are you looking to win now? Are you looking to draft a more youthful team? Are you looking for a mix of that? It really depends on what you're looking to do. A lot of times what I'll see fantasy owners do is they'll come into it and you say, you know what, this is Dynasty. I need to make sure that I have a youthful team for the next 2 to 5 years. Number one, for fantasy leagues, playing 3-year increments. 3 years is what I look for in terms of Dynasty League. I always look 3 years out, no more than that. But anyway, you know, what is it that you want to do in this draft? A lot of people will load up on as many youthful players as possible, and they'll say, you know what? I don't care if I tank year one. I'm just interested in year two having a really good draft pick and having a really youthful team. I don't like that strategy. I personally don't like that because why would you throw away basically your first year just to say, I might have a shot down the road? Because you might draft a bunch of young guys thinking all these guys are going to hit, and maybe they don't. You know, if you're doing a little bit of a mix and saying, okay, I want to get some young guys, I want to make sure I'm planning ahead, but I want to be, you know, competitive this year, then you're going to be drafting some really good, talented players this year, some top tier level players, and you're not necessarily going to say, you know what, I'm just going to wait and see what happens. And the win now mode is kind of a veteran laid team. So, you know, a lot of times in a dynasty league, you might see a guy like, you know, Larry Fitzgerald is going to go really late because we know, hey, he doesn't have a lot of time left. He might only have 1 year left. If you're planning on saying, you know, I'm all in this year, I don't care about youth in any way, shape, or form, I just want to get the best players available, you might draft Larry Fitzgerald a lot earlier than what everybody else might because they're going to say, you know what, he doesn't have nearly enough time left. But here's the thing. You want to plan this out before the draft happens because you don't want to get caught saying, you know what, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to win now, and you just don't end up getting those players. Or the same thing with youth. Maybe those youth players don't end up falling to you. Maybe they end up going a lot earlier than you would anticipate. And because of that, maybe your first 4 rounds you were really focused on youth. And then after that, you're like, oh man, these guys are not falling to me. I can't get them. I got to start drafting them earlier. So have a plan when you go into it. You can adapt during the draft and do different things, but have a solid plan going into it so you know this is what I want to try and do the entire way. Another thing that I tell a lot of fantasy owners, and I get this question a lot, is should I trade up? Should I move up and get a second first round pick? Should I move up into the second round again? What should I do? I always tell fantasy owners, do not trade up, because a lot of time what happens is fantasy owners will go, you know what? I can move up into the first round, but it's going to cost me my third, fourth, and fifth rounders, or it's going to cost me a 2, 3, and a 5. That's great. You're going to get 2 top 12 players, 2 top 14 players, depending on how many people in your league. That's excellent. However, now you have lost the ability to draft some really good guys in those later and those early rounds, and you don't want to do that. Do not do that to your dynasty team at the very beginning. Don't say, "Hey, I want to get 2 studs." And then only have 2 studs and then miss out on getting very good guys, especially some younger guys that maybe just haven't quite popped yet, that might still pop. Maybe, some elite guys that have fallen a little bit. You miss out on that. That's not something you want to do. So don't ever trade up. That's my recommendation. Don't ever do that. However, trading back isn't necessarily a bad idea, because let's say you're at the end of the first round and you say, you know what, I want one of these wide receivers here possibly, but someone comes to you and says, man, I want to get back into the first round. I would love to trade my 2 and my 3 to get back into the first round. Well, maybe you're only falling back like 4 spots. Take a look at it. So I always say, if you're going to trade back, that's fine. But what are you getting out of it? Don't trade too far back. Don't go from like the middle of the first all the way to the end of the second or something crazy. Don't do that. But if it's only a few spots to move back and pick up a couple of those early round picks in advance, make that happen. Those are always good. Just don't trade up and then leave yourself in the middle rounds or the early rounds missing out on picks for 2 to 3 rounds. You don't want to do that. I always tell fantasy owners, and there's always a debate within dynasty leagues, wide receivers versus running backs. People love their wide receivers. Typically, they stay around a lot longer. Typically, they produce a lot longer. I get that. I understand that. Always get your running back 1 and always get your wide receiver 1. Always give yourself a nice, solid base at those positions with 2 guys that you can lean on, and know that these are going to be plug and play guys. I'm going to put these guys in and I'm going to get really good numbers every single week. In a dynasty league, Antonio Brown is probably going to be a second round pick this year instead of a first round pick. Let's say he does end up falling mid to late second. Maybe you pick in the mid second and you say, or mid first, and you say, you know what, I'm going to take Alvin Kamara maybe at that 4, 5, 6 spot, depending on how things fall. Maybe you take a guy like Alvin Kamara and then you get to the middle of the second round and you say, you know what, I can get Antonio Brown. He's going to be my wide receiver 1 for the next 1, 2, possibly 3 years. Get him at that point. You get a really good deal on him. You can always flip him later on. Maybe your season doesn't go nearly as good as you think it is. In the end season, when things are going crazy and guys are and owners are looking for guys to add to their team, and somebody really needs that wide receiver to make it to the playoffs, you can end up flipping Antonio Brown for a really nice price later on. So I know Antonio Brown is there's a lot of people that are kind of off of him right now, but to get him in the mid-second round is a tremendous value. Now you have your wide receiver 1. Now you have your running back 1. Now you're set at the top of both of those positions, and then you can maneuver what you want to do. Do you want to be a wide receiver heavy team? Then invest those next several picks in wide receivers. Do that. That is fine. We're going to talk about here in a minute kind of how to maneuver with those, but first, always wait on your quarterback. Honestly, I don't even care if it's super flex. I am always a late round quarterback type of guy, even in Dynasty. You know what? Give me Phillip Rivers. That's fine. While everybody is spending early round picks on Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson and all these younger quarterbacks, Jared Goff, is everybody is spending those early round picks? Give me the running backs and wide receivers. Give me as many of those guys as I possibly can get. Let me stash up my team. And you know what? Later on, when all of you have taken quarterbacks and now I have my pick of everyone else, I can take a Drew Brees. I can take a Phillip Rivers. I can take an older quarterback that, it's not going to be around a whole lot longer. But then later in the draft, too, get your younger quarterback. Go after somebody else. Maybe a guy that was drafted this year. Maybe you take like a Dwayne Haskins. Kyler Murray's going way too high right now, so that's not that big of a, don't worry about that. But maybe you can get your hands on Dwayne Haskins. I know people hate Daniel Jones. I don't love him either, but he's coming at a really good price right now. So maybe you spend spend a late round pick on a Daniel Jones, knowing that Eli Manning is going to be done soon. Maybe you take Eli Manning and Daniel Jones after you've taken Phillip Rivers, and now you have 3 quarterbacks. And after Phillip Rivers, hey, either of these guys, I'm going to be set at my quarterback too. Okay. Even in Superflex, you're going to have to move a little bit quicker, but still wait. Get all these other positions, these positions like running back and wide receiver that you're going to have to replace more often. You're going to have to replace wide receivers and running backs far more often than you are a quarterback. So you need a lot of depth. You need a lot of good depth. You need a lot of young depth. You don't want to lose that depth during a dynasty league, okay? So if you wait on quarterback a little bit longer and then draft them later on, let's say in the rookie draft next year, go and get them then. Maybe make a trade in season for a younger quarterback, whatever it may be. Work around your quarterback later on. Build the depth at those other positions, those premium positions on your roster early and often, and then get your quarterbacks later. And now kind of back to what I was talking a minute ago. So if you're going to say, you know what, I'm a big wide receiver guy. I love my wide receivers. I'm going to take as many good wide receivers as I can. I'm going to take an Evans and then a Diggs, and maybe I'll take an Adams and then a Thielen in round 2 or whatever it may be. If that's what you're going to do, if you're going to plan on doing a really heavy wide receiver draft at the beginning, get your wide receivers and then find running back depth to stash later on. So like we saw it last year, Damian Williams won a lot of leagues for owners last year, right? Do that. Get those later in the draft, get those stashes, those younger guys, and Alexander Madison, who's behind Dalvin Cook. Okay, jump at those guys and get those backups later on. So then if injuries start to happen, either number 1, you have a guy to plug and play, or number 2, you have really good trade bait. Because if somebody goes down, Dalvin Cook, say, goes down, and the Dalvin Cook owner needs Alexander Madison, and you have him, he becomes a really nice fantasy trade bait there for you to move and say, I'm going to get a wide receiver, I'm going to get some picks next year, whatever it may be. Get those running backs to stash, that depth. Those guys that could be, one injury away or one big game away from taking over and really seeing their value increase. Really target those guys. Now, on the flip side, if you're a running back guy, or a person, girl, whatever, whoever's playing fantasy, it doesn't matter. If you're a running back owner like I am and you love to get your running backs early, then go after those target wide receiver volumes, okay? So go after the guys that are going to get a ton of volumes. If you're in a half PPR or a PPR league, Golden Tate has always been one of my favorite targets at wide receiver, because I knew in Detroit he was going to get peppered with targets. He was going to get a lot of receptions. He's a guy that, gets a lot of yards after the catch. So guys like that are people that I'm going to consistently target over and over and over and over, because I've gotten my running back 1 and my wide receiver 1, and now I've focused on running back. Maybe in the first 5 rounds I pick 3 running backs. If that's the case, then later on, if you only have 1 wide receiver, now you have to build that depth at wide receiver and get those guys that are going to be really nice volume plays, guys that are going to get peppered with a lot of targets. I don't typically like those boomer bust options. I do like Traquan Smith, but he's probably not a guy that, if I'm investing in a lot of running backs early, then I'm going to invest, Traquan Smith to try and be my wide receiver 3 or something like that, because you've waited so long to take your wide receiver. So, get those volume guys. Get those guys that are going to have a ton of targets that are going to be really good PPR options, that you're going to get that added benefit there. And if you're looking at playing in a standard league, which not a whole lot of people do anymore, but if you're in a standard league, running backs are going to go quick and often. You again, get your running back 1, get your wide receiver 1. But in a standard league, I am at that point going to want to make sure that I get 1 or 2 really good wide receivers early, because I want to make sure that at that point that I'm getting the volume and the touchdowns that would come from those upper tier guys, instead of waiting on those guys back that are going to be more of your target in yards kind of guys, because you're not going to get nearly the same amount of points. So that's some tips, some tricks, some strategy, some different things to keep in mind when you are doing your Dynasty startup draft. Again, whether you're doing your first one or you're a veteran when it comes to Dynasty, love Dynasty. If you've never done it before, definitely give it a shot. If you're interested in joining a Dynasty league, message me on Twitter. Send me a DM on Twitter. I'm going to try and get you hooked up with a Dynasty league. I know a lot of people, they're always looking for owners. I can get you hooked up with typically a lot of money leagues. So if you're interested in playing for a little bit of money this year, you could do that. If you want to play in a free league, whatever it may be, send me a message on Twitter at krich1532. You can see that right here. Send me a message there. I'll get you hooked up with a league that's looking to fill up with some good owners, and we can give you a shot at Dynasty for the first time. Or if you just need that fix and you want to grab another Dynasty league, let me know and I can help you out. Either way, doesn't matter. I need this from you, though. Hit that like button down below. Would really appreciate that. If you have not subscribed to the Fantasy Headliners yet, welcome to your first video, and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you are not going to regret that decision. And let me know in the comments if this is your first time watching the video and you just became a part of Headliner Nation by subscribing to the channel. Let me know, because I want to personally welcome you to the channel and to one of the best fantasy football communities, fantasy sports communities, overall YouTube communities that there is out there. Thanks so much for your support, everyone. Really appreciate it. Going to be doing a couple of videos for you this week, but again, we're nose deep in that draft guide, a really good draft guide coming for you. Make sure that you pre-order that right now. $19.99. It'll be available by the end of June. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode of the Fantasy Headliners, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good one, everyone.